Hello, and welcome to Adventures in TV Land. For today's adventure, I've come to Eagle Cliff Mile Cemetery in between Waterloo and Valmeyer, Illinois. I believe the address actually is Waterloo address. And we've just come here to check out this historic cemetery that is here. Now there's this bulletin board here, which includes quite a bit of information about Eagle Cliff Mile Cemetery. There are also some photos there and some general information. Just a few things to point out here on the information here. There are veterans from all the way from the Revolutionary War. There's 2 Revolutionary War veterans here. Black Hawk War, the Indian War, the Civil War, the War of 1812, the Mexican War, and 2 World War II vets, as well as 1 who served during peacetime. The other thing, quite interesting, talks here about who the cemetery is named after, Stephen Miles, who built the mausoleum here. But the last couple sentences there, it says, additional land was purchased from the claims of pioneers who came to the area and improved the land. And some of those individuals were in the military, and after they staked their claims, stories are told that they mysteriously disappeared. And then lastly, it said that Stephen Miles often came out here and looked over Eagle Cliff and would look around and say, for miles and miles, it's all miles. And there is a photo of Stephen Miles. Burial plots are for sale, but are limited to the cremation only. Visiting hours here are sunrise to sunset, and anyone caught destroying property will be prosecuted. There are cameras all around here. And under this tree here, there's a bench, kind of a patio setting. And the sign there, this was an Eagle Scout project from July of 2006. But it is made, the little patio there, the stones are made from the broken tombstones of many of the people that are buried here. Their graves could not be located, and these tombstones were just found lying around. Eagle Cliff Mile Cemetery sits atop a bluff that overlooks the Mississippi River on the Illinois side. It's a few miles actually from the river, but you can see the bottoms below, and the river in the distance. Eagle Cliff is the older part of the name, and is actually what this overlook, its name was known as many years ago, because there was all these eagles that roosted above. The Miles name comes from the gentleman who purchased most of the land here, or acquired most of the land, Stephen Miles, and he had a home down below this area, and he acquired land as through various he would purchase it. There were people who were given land and they would disappear, and their claims were acquired by Mr. Miles. Stephen Miles is the individual who is responsible for the mausoleum that was built here, that overlooks the bluff, and so that is why the cemetery contains his name. Now this bluff that the cemetery rests upon, it is believed, though it cannot really be confirmed necessarily, but this bluff was sacred ground and was believed to been a burial ground for the Native Americans in this area. So there is that mystery to it as well. There was a burial ground for the Native Americans that were buried inside the bluff, and then later on top of it became a cemetery. Now, while the burials of about 430 individuals have been located and are known to be buried here, it is believed that there could be over 2,000 people buried in this cemetery. But most of their graves have become lost, and they just don't know where they are at. There's a marker there for Thomas Johnson, a veteran of the Civil War. William Agnew, he was a veteran of the Mexican War. Another Civil War veteran, Seth Iman Sr. There was another veteran, not for sure which war, probably the Civil War, but Elias Iman. Here's a gravestone marking the resting place of, sadly, two twins, Mildred and Mabel Shook, born and died on January 15th, 1911. So sad. And all along here you'll see these concrete pillars sticking out of the ground, and those designate known grave sites, but we no longer know who was buried. Just want to show here that here is a tombstone marker and how it has been repaired and placed together. Someone who was known where they were buried at, A.P. Lacey. This is the grave of a War of 1812 veteran, Elijah Axley. Here's the grave of Martin Van Buren Axley, a veteran of the Civil War. Another War of 1812 veteran, John Murdoch. He was a major in the Illinois militia. It is said that the Eagle Cliff Mile Cemetery is an extremely haunted place, and with all the stories about it being built atop an Indian Native American burial ground in the bluffs below and the cemetery on top, it's not difficult to understand why people at least might believe that to be the case. John James, he was part of the Illinois Volunteers during the Indian Wars. Here is the grave site of another infant, actually a set of siblings, infant siblings. Wilson J. Livers, born December 15th, 1850. He died 7 months, 8 days later. And John II Livers, born October 21st, 1852, and died 1 day later. This is a somewhat simple tombstone. Looks like there was writing at one time on the bottom that has been completely weathered away. But at the top it says, "In memory of Elizabeth Todd, who died May 7th, 1836, aged 27 years. Another military grave, Michael W. Shook, fought in the Indian Wars. Now here is the site of James Garretson. He was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. Died in 1797. Here we have the gravesite of Shadrach Bond. He was a Revolutionary War veteran as well. And in Illinois, particularly, he has some prominence because he was the uncle to the later Shadrach Bond, who became the first governor of Illinois. And the county in which I was raised growing up, Bond County, is named after Shadrach Bond. I know there are many who do not like to come to cemeteries or get freaked out by, famous gravesite videos or, cemetery videos, things like that. Personally, myself, I occasionally actually like visiting a cemetery because it reminds me of my own mortality and the importance of living life to the fullest and making the most of every moment that is given to you. Because the chances, once we pass away from this world into the next, and this body, this shell is left behind, the best most of us can ever hope for is that, there will be a marker somewhere with our name on it. And that and hopefully our story, our life, the things we did will be passed on from one generation to the next. It's kind of like in Hamilton, the musical, who will tell my story?
And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell my story?
Who will tell your story? The best you can hope for is that there'll be a marker there with your name on it, and family members telling your story for generations to come. But many don't get that. Many don't even get a marker, let alone get their story told through future generations. And so, in this lifetime, make the most of every opportunity. Make the most of every moment. Live life to the fullest. And enjoy the blessings that God bestows upon you. This little section here, take a look at in just a moment. It is mostly, although not all, of newer grave sites. Another veteran of the Civil War, Ira Stanton. Here's another veteran of the Civil War, James W. Green. He looks like he was actually killed in combat, April 28, 1864. Only 19 years old. Here's a more modern grave, Brian Stetzler. He would have been 50 years old this year. But on the back of his tombstone, there's this prayer. Dear God, please give me the strength to endure challenges. Help me to find the blessings in the world. Help me to see life lessons in all actions. Please give me the endurance to continue ahead. Please guide me in my thoughts, words, and actions so that I can walk your path of integrity, peace, and love. Amen. And there is the back of the mausoleum, the Miles Mausoleum. Here's an informational placard about Eagle Cliff Miles Cemetery. Stephen Miles' mausoleum was built in 1858, and the upkeep was bestowed, and there was the responsibility of the eldest living family heir. There was used to be a iron fence around here, but in by the early 1860s, the mausoleum was in disrepair. Vandals had broken in and destroyed all the contents inside, and there was, I believe, graffiti, and the only reason it still stands today is due to the cleanup and restoration and maintenance by a group of voluntary board members. I was driving by several months ago, and I saw this mausoleum from the road. I had no idea what it was. You can see here where the wrought iron gate, some poles where it used to stand. And this site is under 24-hour video surveillance. Top there you can read S.W. Miles, Stephen W. Miles. It's hard to believe that this crypt was once filled with remains of an entire family, or most of the family. So the outside of the cemetery, it is a Illinois nature preserve. All plants, animals, and other natural features within this area are protected by law. Weapons, vehicles, pets, horses, and camping are prohibited. There, looking out. It's this beautiful farmland. We're only a few miles from the Mississippi River. However, it's not to say this area does not flood and did not used to flood. During the Great Flood of 1993, this entire area right here down below was filled with water from the Mississippi. Well, this has been another adventure in TV land. If you've liked this video, hit that like button. If you disliked, hit the dislike button. Thank you for watching. Until next time, that's a wrap.